I'm pleased to be joined by Martin Rolfe, CEO here at NATS. Martin, hello.
Hello.
What have been some of your key takeaways so far then from the show and your conversations?
So I think the themes are still broadly the same as we've been talking about throughout the year and at previous shows. So new users, although I was informed earlier that some of those new users are no longer quite so new. They're existing users that have been around a while, but we haven't yet fully integrated them into the airspace. I did an interesting panel this morning on diversity and inclusion. That is very much a theme of this show, obviously coinciding with Women's Day, International Women's Day today. So I think under the circumstances, those topics of sort of people and technology have come together. That's what I'm seeing so far.
And what are NATS doing in the space of new users then? If we start there and then we'll touch on both of those if that's all right. What work are we doing to integrate new airspace users?
So we're doing quite a lot of different pieces. A lot of the work that we've been doing is around, I guess you would call it groundwork, around what are the conditions required, what is the technology required, how will we work out who's flying where. And if you look at, for example, last year, obviously we did the space launch, the Virgin space launch, which was the first in the UK for space launches, which is quite incredible. I don't think I ever really thought we'd see rockets launch from the UK. And I mean, I know it wasn't quite launched from the UK, but that's coming. So I think it's about how we do those things, try them out, see how they work, and then improve them. And I think one of the themes that came out with the new users was, how do we get things moving? So we can talk for a long while about regulation or charging mechanisms or safety. All of those things need to be there, but actually they don't need to all be there with the exception of safety. They don't need to all be there at the very first time you try something. So when you look at some of the projects that are going on at the moment, so for example, medical supplies being moved by drones, all of those kind of things are starting to move that dial in terms of delivering results with uncrewed traffic, delivering results with spacecraft. We've got high altitude platforms coming as well. So it's all moving, not at a huge pace, but it feels like it's starting to slowly accumulate some momentum.
So is it fair to say that NATS are starting to drive some innovation in that area then?
I think we're starting to drive innovation. I think the challenge is that everybody's trying to do that, both the new users, other ANSPs, other regions of the world. So I think there's a risk in all of this that either somebody gets left behind. We obviously don't want that to be us. So we've got a lot of work to do there to make sure we are innovating as fast as we can and bringing others along with us, like the regulator, whether that be safety regulator or economic regulator. So I think we are doing well in that space. I think there's more we can do, and there's ever more we're going to need to do. I think it's a really difficult question to know what the right pace is, because with some of these things, you're trying to make sure that you're ready for the new users, but not so far ahead of them that nobody quite knows how they're going to operate. So I think there's a bit of trial and error in all of this, but trial and error in a safe way that gives us then the opportunity to build on that and do it differently the next time and the next time and the next time.
And how does the integration of new users look for the existing users of the airspace, such as the airlines, for example?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we're going to have to be really careful about. And this was spoken about at a panel yesterday in the CANSO CEO conference. And Willie Walsh mentioned the fact that it can't be at the expense of the existing users. Now, particularly when you look at a lot of the regulated ANSPs and all of this, we're paid for by the airlines, and their charges, or our charges to them, pay for everything we do. They are much more willing to be involved in this if it is to enable the use of airspace in a way that doesn't mean that they are in some way disadvantaged. So I think we have to do this in a way which means that we accommodate everybody fairly and equitably, but at the same time there's a flaw to that which says we can't degrade the service that we currently give to airlines. Now, to be fair to airlines, they also want to see changes. They want to be able to do more user-preferred routes, more sustainable routes. Airspace modernization is a big part of that. So trying to weave all that together and make sure that no one party is disadvantaged is quite difficult. By the same token, we also can't have one party paying for the efforts of all the new users to come in, like, for example, the airlines. So a bit of a balancing act there, I think.
Airspace modernization was a theme that came up in a conversation we had with NAV Canada as well. So it's what does that look like for NATS? What does airspace modernization mean from a NATS perspective?
So I think airspace modernization means a few different things. So I think if you take our existing structures, if you like, so the controlled airspace we currently have, what it really means is free route airspace, probably above flight level 245, but free route airspace across the whole of the UK, and then very structured airspace, well-planned airspace in the lower levels, getting us into and out of the various airports. It's only with that we're getting a combination of trajectory-based operations in the upper airspace, so airlines flying their preferred routes, being able to save CO2, less fuel burn, shorter journey times, and then integrated into that very carefully planned route structure at the lower levels. That means we don't end up with everything being exception-based. At the moment, there are so many interventions in the lower airspace by our controllers to get an aircraft from, say, Heathrow out to over Dover. If we can plan that so that there don't need to be so many interventions, that improves capacity, improves safety, and it gives us the opportunity to weave more airspace users into that structured system.
In terms of weaving and the integration piece, I've spoken to some people, different organisations this morning who are all focused on technology, many of whom have worked closely with NATS. What role does technology play in that?
So technology plays a part, but technology isn't the answer. We spend a lot of time and effort on technology, and that's right and appropriate, but technology is a means to an end. So technology, if it helps us deliver a different operation, a better operation, more sustainable, more on time. So where technology is going to help us is giving us a single picture of the traffic that's in the UK at any one time, or further afield for that matter. So technology gives us the building blocks on which we can build an operation, but you still need the people, the training, the procedures, and an idea of how you're going to operate it. So it isn't technology at all costs, and it isn't any technology. It's technology that solves specific problems, delivers specific results, and ultimately leads to a different kind of operation that suits all the new users.
Great stuff. I mean, in terms of thinking differently as well, you mentioned diversity and inclusion as one of your key takeaways from yesterday. What work are NATS doing in that area?
So we're doing a lot of work on diversity and inclusion, starting with inclusion. It's always been my belief, diversity and inclusion is the right thing to do. There's no doubt about it. All the studies will tell you that a diverse organisation has better quality decision making, happier employees, it's more profitable, it's safer, it's all the things you could hope for. But more than that, it's just right. It's the absolute right thing to do. So we've spent a lot of time over the last year really working on our diversity and inclusion agenda and making sure that we're putting in the foundations, because without inclusion, diversity is pointless. You can attract a lot of diverse talent, whether that be gender diversity, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, but if they don't then feel included, then they'll leave and you won't get the best out of them. So inclusion has been the first bit, and that's been underpinned by some of our new values around respect. So inclusion is the first piece. Then we also need equity, and by equity I don't mean equality, I mean, which is giving everybody the same thing. I mean giving people the tools, the training, the expertise, the confidence to be able to do the job so that they can do it to the best possible ability. That's not the same for everybody. What I need to improve in my job will be different to what you need to improve in your job. So giving everybody the right tools. What we've also talked a lot about is recruitment. We're a slow turnover organisation, which is great. We've got people who work for us for their entire careers, which is also great. We spend time and effort training people, and if they can have a career that spans decades, that's fantastic. But that also means we may need to make real efforts at those lower levels to make sure we're recruiting in a diverse way. So we're doing a lot of effort around how we review CVs, how we review candidates, how we look at things in a way that isn't unconsciously biased towards what we've seen before. I think one of the best measures of success there is that in our latest graduate and apprenticeship intake, we were at 58% female to male ratio, which I think is brilliant. Now, some people will undoubtedly say, well, hold on, shouldn't it be 50-50? Yes, ultimately it should absolutely be 50-50, but we've got probably 100 years of aviation to redress in there first. So anything we can do to start getting that balance better, I think has got to be a good thing. So that's been a lot of what we've been talking about at the show, but also a lot of other people are talking about the same thing. So I think it's a very sort of the moment.
Great stuff. Martin, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.